Good afternoon, everybody. Hope your day has gone well. We continue our series looking at 7 thoughts of various characters through history, and today it is William Wilberforce. Wilberforce, who will probably always be associated with the abolition of the slave trade, and he worked so hard for that, but was involved in many other projects as well. Born in 1759, died in 1833. When he was about 26, 1785, he came to a renewed understanding of his Christian faith, and if I may say, he moved up a gear in terms of his commitment at that point. 2 years later, 1787, he read Thomas Clarkson's evidence about the horrors of the slave trade, and Wilberforce decided to get involved. He campaigned long and hard, and the first bill to outlaw the slave trade was finally passed 20 years later, 1807. But slavery itself, as opposed to just the trading of slaves, slavery itself wasn't outlawed until 1833, in fact 3 days before Wilberforce himself died. As well as seeking the abolition of slavery, he was involved in many other things, part of a society for the suppression of vice, involved in the founding of Sierra Leone for freed slaves, involved in the founding of the Church Mission Society and the Society for the Prevention of the Cruelty to Animals, which later became the RSPCA, the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. A man involved in lots of things, and 7 brief thoughts about him, mostly based, as ever, on his own quotations from speeches or writings. First of all, he was someone committed to his own personal spiritual disciplines and encouraging others likewise. These 3 quotations. Of all things, guard against neglecting God in the secret place of prayer. Oh, what a blessing is Sunday, interposed between the waves of worldly business, like the divine path of the Israelites through the sea. There is nothing in which I would advise you to be more strictly conscientious than in keeping the Sabbath day holy. I can truly declare that to me the Sabbath has been invaluable. The objects of the present life fill the human eye with a false magnification because of their immediacy. In reverse order, if I may, the objects of the present life fill the human eye with a false magnification because of their immediacy. Just that understanding that something which seems so immediate, so in our faces, can take on an importance maybe larger than it might need to. And the present discussion in many circles about the difference between the urgent and the important, Wilberforce was very aware of that temptation. We always need to remember what is truly significant, however urgent and immediate something else seems to be. And of course sometimes things are both. The middle quotation about keeping the Sabbath well. I can truly declare that to me the Sabbath has been invaluable. Here was a person who did so much, who worked so hard, and he knew he needed his day of rest. And thinking like this informed quite a lot of spirituality throughout the 19th century as people picked up this theme. Lots of us may feel that we are indeed busy people. Perhaps we can remember that for Wilberforce, who was incredibly busy, he knew how to keep his rest well. And the first quote about prayer, of all things guard against neglecting God in the secret place of prayer. That for Wilberforce was where he got his inspiration, his strength, his encouragement. He kept on saying his prayers, and he encouraged others to do the same. Secondly, he was someone who believed that faith and politics were all entwined, that the public life and our private faith needed to be mixed together for the good of the community. He said this, I would suggest that faith is everyone's business. The advance or decline of faith is so intimately connected to the welfare of a society that it should be of particular interest to a politician. It was said that in his younger days he was questioned as to whether he should be fulfilling the duties of God or going into politics. And he was questioned by someone else who said, Wilberforce, you can do both. And for some of us who feel called to be involved in public life, we can be inspired by his example. And just that whole understanding that people's faith and values inform their politics, but also can be informed by politics. Thirdly, he was someone of great vision. God Almighty has set before me two great objects, the suppression of the slave trade and the reformation of manners. God Almighty has set before me two great objects. And we know that for Wilberforce, that setting before him was through what he had read, experienced, heard, discussed with others, and he sensed that that was the vision. These were the visions which he should follow. For us, perhaps sometimes it feels less clear, but to be able to grasp a vision or two or three that we feel particularly called to follow, to pursue, again, is a good example. And the reformation of manners. We all know about Wilberforce, perhaps because of the slave trade, but he also wanted people to live well and to check the right values were being spread. Great perseverance. As I said at the beginning, it took 20 years for the first bill to be passed, and then another 26 for that crucial second bill to be passed. Wilberforce kept at it throughout all those long years. There was a great deal of opposition to him. People said, you can't get rid of slavery. So many jobs depend upon it. So much of our economy depends upon it. We cannot stop being a slave trading nation. But Wilberforce believed he knew what was right, and he persevered, gathering people around him, gathering campaigns, encouraging others, getting petitions. He kept on. He kept on making enormously influential speeches in the House of Commons. He was a very good orator, and he kept on, even though it took so long. He says this, our motto must continue to be perseverance, and ultimately I trust the Almighty will crown our efforts with success. Our motto must continue to be perseverance. Ultimately, I trust the Almighty will crown our efforts with success. He was someone who exemplified what we may now today call stickability, and he felt that God would bless that perseverance. And then fifthly, he listened to others. He liked working in a team, as much later another great social reformer, Martin Luther King, also liked to do. So he enjoyed the company of Hannah More and Thomas Clarkson, Granville Sharp, John Newton, the converted slave trader who had written Amazing Grace, and he learned from them, and they worked out ideas and campaigns together. He liked working in a team. They were later known as the Clapham Sect. In fact, that label was given a little bit after Wilberforce was alive, because several of them lived in Clapham, and they met there and they discussed and they prayed together. They were sometimes mockingly known as the Saints. But again, that says lots about their sense of community, as well as the labels which others may wish to put. He liked working with others. Sixthly, I must keep moving. Sixthly, he was good at challenging. You may choose to look the other way, but you can never say again that you did not know. So when people kept voting against his bill to abolish slavery, when people kept opposing what he was saying, he would challenge them by this: you cannot run away from the evidence. You may choose to look the other way, but you can never say again that you did not know. And in that challenge there was the encouragement for them to make their decisions, knowing that they now knew the horrors of slavery. And lastly, he valued everybody's gifts. He felt everybody has a part to play. We have different forms assigned to us in the school of life, different gifts imparted. All is not attractive that is good. Iron is useful, though it does not sparkle like the diamond. Gold has not the fragrance of a flower. So different persons have various modes of excellence, and we must have an eye to all. Different persons have various modes of excellence, and we must have an eye to all. He enjoyed noticing the gifts that other people brought to the table. He enjoyed valuing them, encouraging them, making the most of them. So 7 quick points about William Wilberforce. As ever in these Monday sessions, one of the aims, one of the hopes is for us to go away and perhaps find out a little bit more if we would like to. But the 7 thoughts today: someone keen on private spiritual disciplines, someone keen on faith and politics being intermingled, people doing what they can to serve their community as best they can, someone with vision and feeling that we can be called to have visions, someone with strong perseverance, someone who liked listening to others, someone who is prepared to challenge others, someone who would value everyone's gifts. If I may cheat slightly and go back a few weeks to our session on Tolkien, because it sounds good to finish with a quote from Lord of the Rings. Those days were not easy in British culture, in British society, and Wilberforce and others like him stood firm for what they believed and changed the world, and slavery banned across the British Empire, and that example then rippling outwards. Gandalf says this: "That is a chapter of ancient history which it might be good to recall. For there was sorrow then too, and gathering dark, but great valour, and great deeds that were not wholly vain." Thank you so much for listening this afternoon.